The air hung heavy and still over Blackwood Manor, a forgotten behemoth of Gothic architecture nestled deep within the gnarled embrace of the ancient Whisperwood. Locals, if they spoke of it at all, did so in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously towards the ominous silhouette that clawed at the perpetually overcast sky. It had stood empty for over half a century, a monument to a tragedy long since faded from common memory, yet its presence still cast a palpable chill over the surrounding land. Dr. Alistair Finch, a man whose life revolved around the rational and the quantifiable, had dismissed such local superstitions as the ramblings of uneducated minds. His specialty was parapsychology, a field he approached with the clinical precision of a surgeon, seeking scientific explanations for phenomena often attributed to the supernatural. When the opportunity arose to purchase Blackwood Manor at a ridiculously low price, a price no doubt influenced by its sinister reputation, Alistair saw not a haunted house, but a unique research opportunity. He envisioned months, perhaps years, of meticulous study, debunking myths, and perhaps, just perhaps, discovering the true psychological underpinnings of alleged hauntings. He arrived on a blustery October afternoon, the kind where the wind howled like a banshee through the skeletal trees and the sky wept an incessant, icy drizzle. His assistant, a perpetually nervous but brilliant young woman named Ilara Vance, clutched her satchel to her chest, her gaze sweeping across the crumbling facade of the manor with a visible shiver. "Are you sure about this, Doctor?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper against the wind's shriek. "It looks malevolent." Alistair chuckled, a dry, academic sound. "Nonsense, Ilara. It looks old and in desperate need of repair. The true malevolence lies in the human imagination, not in bricks and mortar." Despite his outward bravado, even Alistair felt a prickle of unease as they pushed open the heavy, creaking front door. The air inside was impossibly cold, laden with the scent of dust, decay, and something else, something metallic like old blood, and strangely, a faint hint of withered roses. The grand foyer, once a testament to opulence, was now a cavern of shadows, dust sheets draped like spectral shrouds over forgotten furniture. Moonlight, filtering through grime-caked windows, cast distorted patterns on the floor, making every shadow dance with a life of its own. Their initial weeks were dedicated to setting up their equipment. Alistair installed an array of sensors, thermal cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, sound recorders, and motion detectors, all meticulously calibrated. Ilara, meanwhile, meticulously cataloged the manor's history, poring over dusty archives and crumbling newspaper clippings. The story that emerged was a tragic one. The Blackwoods, a prominent and wealthy family, had lived in the manor for generations. In 1872, the entire family, Lord and Lady Blackwood, their 2 young children, and several servants, had vanished without a trace. No bodies were ever found, no explanation ever offered. The manor was simply abandoned, left to decay, its secrets locked within its stone walls. The only clue left behind was a chilling entry in Lady Blackwood's diary, found open on her dressing table. "The whispers are growing louder. They know. They are coming." Alistair dismissed the diary entry as the ramblings of a disturbed mind, perhaps a precursor to whatever led to their disappearance. He focused on the data, and the data, surprisingly, was not entirely silent. Initially, it was subtle. Random cold spots, not explainable by drafts, would appear and vanish. EMF spikes would register on their meters, fluctuating wildly as if an invisible current surged through the air. The most disturbing phenomena, however, were the sounds. Faint whispers, too indistinct to make out words, would occasionally be picked up by their sensitive microphones. Sometimes it sounded like a child's mournful sob. Other times, a woman's low, desperate plea. "It's the wind, Alistair," Ilara would rationalize, her voice lacking conviction. "Or the old pipes." But Alistair knew better. He had meticulously checked for every conceivable rational explanation. The house was sealed, the pipes dormant, and the wind, while a factor, could not mimic the distinct human intonations he was beginning to hear. One night, as Alistair was reviewing the day's recordings in the makeshift lab they had set up in the library, he heard clearly, a child's voice, small and terrified, whispering, "Mama, help me." It was unmistakable. He called Alara in, his own composure shaken. She listened, her face paling. That's not the wind, Doctor." Their research intensified. They spent long nights in the darkest corners of the manor, setting up cameras, baiting the unseen with recordings of calming music and gentle conversation. They were looking for a response, a tangible interaction. Then, things began to escalate. Objects would move. A book would slide off a shelf when no one was near. A heavy, antique rocking chair in the nursery, a room they had previously avoided due to its unsettling aura, would begin to sway gently, even when the air was completely still. One evening, Alistair was documenting the temperature fluctuations in the dining room when he felt a sudden, icy breath on the back of his neck. He spun around, his heart pounding, but there was nothing. Yet, the air around him felt dense, heavy, as if an unseen presence stood directly behind him. Alara, meanwhile, was experiencing her own terrifying encounters. She would often feel a faint touch on her arm, a fleeting brush against her hair, as if someone unseen was constantly trying to get her attention. One afternoon, while sifting through old photographs in the drawing room, she distinctly saw a shadow detach itself from the wall and glide across the floor, resolving into the fleeting shape of a small child. Before vanishing as quickly as it appeared, she screamed, her voice echoing through the silent house, and it took Alistair an hour to calm her down. "It's just your mind playing tricks, Alara," he insisted, though a part of him now doubted his own words. The stress of the environment. But the stress was building for Alistair too. He found himself waking in the dead of night, convinced he heard footsteps on the floor above him, or the faint, melancholic strains of a lullaby. He began to sleep with a flashlight by his bed, his dreams filled with spectral children and whispering shadows. The whispers, previously indistinct, began to coalesce into fragments of words. "Cold, lost, help us." One particularly stormy night, the power flickered and died, plunging the manor into absolute darkness. Alistair and Alara were in the kitchen, preparing a late dinner when the lights went out. A sudden, piercing shriek ripped through the silence, emanating from the floor above. It was not a human shriek. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror and agony. Alistair grabbed his powerful flashlight, its beam cutting a trembling path through the oppressive darkness. "Stay here, Alara," he ordered, his voice tight with a fear he refused to acknowledge. He ascended the grand staircase, each creaking step amplified in the profound silence. The air grew colder with every step, and the scent of withered roses became overpowering, sickly sweet. The shriek had seemed to come from the master bedroom. As he reached the landing, he heard the whispers again, louder this time, swirling around him like an invisible vortex. They were no longer fragments. They were distinct voices, multiple voices, overlapping and distorted, filled with anguish and rage. He pushed open the master bedroom door. The room was bathed in an eerie, phosphorescent glow, emanating from no discernible source. Lady Blackwood's antique dressing table, previously covered in a dust sheet, now stood exposed. On its surface, a collection of objects lay meticulously arranged. A tarnished silver locket, a child's porcelain doll with a cracked face, and a lock of braided, dark hair. And beside them, open to a new page, lay Lady Blackwood's diary. Alistair's hand trembled as he reached for it. The words, written in faded ink, seemed to writhe on the page. "They are here. They were always here. The children, they hear them. The whispers are promises of pain, of cold, of endless night. They want us to join them. My sweet ones, they will take you too. I hear their hungry cries. We try to leave, but the manor, it will not let us go. It never lets anyone go." Alistair felt a profound chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The previous rationalizations shattered around him. This wasn't a haunting. it was a prison. Suddenly, a gust of icy wind swept through the room, though all the windows were closed and boarded. The locket on the dressing table clattered to the floor, and the doll's head slowly, unnervingly, turned to face him, its cracked eyes seeming to stare into his very soul. And then he heard it, not a whisper, but a clear, resonant voice emanating from all around him, yet from nowhere. A child's voice brimming with malevolence. "You're next." Alistair stumbled backward, his heart leaping into his throat. He swung the flashlight wildly, its beam dancing across the walls, revealing nothing but peeling wallpaper and the looming shadows. But he felt a presence, an immense, suffocating weight pressing down on him. He heard Alara's panic scream from downstairs. He had left her alone. He bolted out of the room, scrambling down the stairs, his mind a chaotic maelstrom of terror and adrenaline. The silence downstairs was even more terrifying than the screams. "Alara!" he yelled, his voice hoarse. "Alara!" He found her in the foyer, huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with unseeing terror. Her body was racked with violent shivers.